For three-dimensional objects, you can make a two-piece box mold. First, decide where to place the seam, which is where the two mold halves will join up. Whenever possible, place your seam along a pre-existing line or detail where it will disappear the most. Embed the model in clay up to where you want your seam line. The clay should meet up perpendicularly to the seam line as cleanly as possible. You need a hole at the top of your mold in order to fill it with casting resin. Here we will be filling it from the base, so we put the base at the very edge of the box. Build a box around the clay. The sides should be at least half an inch from the edges of the model and extend half an inch taller than the highest point of the model. Be sure all the seams are sealed well using clay, hot glue, or whatever else suits you. Carve registration marks into the clay. These will help line up the two halves of the mold. Here I am carving a channel around the entire model, which also helps keep the casting material from leaking out the sides. Some substances, particularly sulfur and latex, will inhibit the cure of silicone rubbers. The clay must be specifically labeled sulfur-free, or you have to assume it contains sulfur. Silicone rubber is the preferred mold material for prop builders to make long-lasting and flexible molds. Measure each part in a separate container and then pour them both into a third container. This ensures a better mix since a small amount of each material will stick to the sides of their original containers. If the two parts are mixed by weight, remember to account for the weight of the container itself. This silicone rubber is mixed in equal proportions by volume. Others can have a ratio up to 10:1, requiring an accurate scale. Always check the instructions. Silicones intended for mold making are tinted to make mixing easier. Fill the box with your silicone rubber. You do not need any mold release at this point. Empty the rubber high above the box so it pours in a thin stream. This helps air bubbles to escape. Pour it into the lowest point in the box and allow it to flow over the model, rather than pouring it directly onto the model. Though silicone rubber is less toxic than other two-part molding and casting materials, the curing agents still create vapors, and the uncured liquids are irritants that can injure the skin and eyes upon contact. Always wear latex-free gloves. When set, take the mold and master out of the box. Remove the clay, flip the mold and master, and put it back in the box. You may also need to carve or add vents to your mold in order to allow air bubbles to escape as you are filling it. Apply mold release over all of the silicone rubber. Products like Man's Ease Release are specifically made to keep liquid silicone rubber from sticking to cured silicone rubber. You can also use thinned down petroleum jelly. Avoid any mold release that contains silicone. You now have a box containing half of your mold and your object. Fill the box with more rubber to make the second half of your mold. When this sets, you should be able to peel the two mold halves apart and remove the master from inside. You now have a two-part mold. Clean out any residue from the clay or your model. Soap and water will usually do the trick. Some rubbers benefit from a post-curing process in a low-temperature oven for a few minutes, so read the product's instructions carefully. Otherwise, you are ready to start casting.